So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success story series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Rob Smith, who's co-founder at Perform Partners. So, firstly, Rob, thank you for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Perform Partners, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Very
So, as you mentioned, my name's Rob Smith. I am one of three co-founders for Perform Partners. Perform Partners are a consultancy based in Leeds. However, we operate with global brands. We're a professional services consultancy, and essentially we look to save organizations technology budgets, and we do that through IT delivery, tech transformation, transformation, cloud transformation, uh, heavily working in regulated markets, so financial services, gambling, etc. Essentially, IT projects is what we do and what we do very well.
brilliant, brilliant. So, and what would you say, Rob, makes a great client for you that you serve best? What sort of client, whether that's sector, type of client, the people that you work with, what makes a great client for you?
I think there's been a very common thread with the types of clients that we've been working with for the last 7 years. So um, clients that operate within what I mentioned there around kind of legal and compliant type sectors. So that can transfer across from financial services to gambling and gaming. So what we see is chaos within those kind
Yes.
of organizations. There's and I mean that in the nicest possible sense.
Yep.
These organizations are under an extreme amount of pressure
Yes.
to to deliver their products and services to the market while being governed by legal, regulatory, compliant
Yep.
type needs. Um, it's extremely competitive in that marketplace, and that's all the ingredients that we see commonly to create the chaos. So,
Yep.
to the question, it's where we operate well and comfortably.
Yep.
The business was set up originally with William Hill. Obviously, now that is a brand not many people are very familiar with called Evoke. Um, and we've grown the business through very similar types of projects. So our raison d'etre, if you like, is I guess the luxury of what we do as a consultancy is we're independent. We can come in,
Yep.
we can look at an organization, we can call it as it is, and we can see the route to success.
Yep.
So very much there's a common thread with everything, every client that we work with um, is yeah, creating kind of law and order through the outcomes that we deliver through whatever means that might be.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So if we start by looking backwards a little bit, can you tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think everyone has an interesting story. So,
Yes.
um, I actually qualified as a traditional graphic designer
Right.
some time ago, which was great. So I'm a creative at heart. I was a flat print graphic designer when I spat out of university, which was around the late 90s, um, right at the time of the internet. So there was very few flat print graphic design jobs. However, there was lots of web design jobs. So I went into my career in the industry as a web designer, working agency side. I guess some kind of career highlights there was working on accounts for Disney and
Oh,
Nestle,
wow.
which was very cool. That was all. I cut my cloth in Leeds. That's where the business is based. And I joined an organization familiar to some, not familiar to others, a company called FreeServe.
Yes.
So FreeServe, for those who don't know, again, a Yorkshire-based organization, a bit of a Yorkshire success story. So they used to provide internet for free. So again, back in the day, I used to be able to get CDs from Dixon's
Yes.
stores So I worked at that organization, which was a great place to work. It was really very cool. Kind of a bit New York-esque. We had offices in the Calls, if people are familiar with Leeds,
Yeah, brilliant.
open kind of air ducts, and it was a really trendy place to work with some incredible people, some very um, entrepreneurial, creative, professional, driven people that made that organization a real success. And it's there that I kind of turn my hand to delivery and project delivery. Um, I guess kind of following that through as a bit of a career thread and who I am. Um, I was then involved. If people remember, so it was France Telecom bought FreeServe.
Yeah,
Obviously, the juggernaut that is France Telecom. So they had an internet brand service provider in France called Wanadoo. So they rebranded FreeServe to Wanadoo, and I do vividly remember the marketing campaign and everyone in the UK saying Wanna who. So obviously, what brands work in certain countries don't work in others.
yes,
Um, and then obviously France Telecom is famed for the Orange brand, which is
yep,
incredibly successful brand. So they rebranded to Orange Internet. So I
yep,
went through several kind of mergers. So from my early days as a graphic designer, then falling into kind of project delivery with telecoms, and then ultimately working on some very high profile projects and programs that saw me involved in the merger of Orange and T-Mobile that created what we know as EE today. So that's kind of a short history. I then went independent as a consultant for a number of years. Worked with clients such as BAE Systems, Sky, William Hill, and then worked kind of in that SI space with Capita and DXC. Um, and that's where I started to see the real opportunity, I guess, that transitioned and saw the birth of Perform Partners, really. So
yes,
I in that SI and consultancy space, saw a real opportunity for a niche consultancy to not do, I guess, what consultancies sometimes have bad reputations for, to charge an incredible amount of money for very little value.
yeah.
And that was really the key kind of birth right and principles that led me to get involved and start something up that is now Perform Partners, obviously with my other co-founders, Paul Rhodes and Sean Walsh.
Brilliant, brilliant. So when you were growing up, is this the sort of future and career you had planned out, or did you have other things planned at the
No, this is nothing like anything I
time?
thought I would be doing. I didn't really have any massive aspirations about anything in particular. A stunt man from watching Fall Guy, or a sports person through a football team or a rugby team that I was following.
Brilliant.
But from career aspects, no, there wasn't anything really driving me there. I remember being my family used to say I was a bit of a wheeler and dealer as a kid, and always striking deals, and they used to call me a young Del boy. So um,
Brilliant.
I'm not big on the term or word entrepreneur. I don't class myself as an entrepreneur. I see myself as just a driven individual that wanted to do something different and add some value in a business that I wanted to control and be involved in.
Brilliant.
It was almost a natural evolution from being an independent consultant
Yes.
to then building that into what we have today with Perform Partners.
Yes, I often speak to some of the people I talk to on these interviews. Some people have a sort of a plan. Some have no plan at all. Some people have a plan set out a particular career path, but some just go, I've always liked business. I've always wanted to be busy. It wasn't critical what that would be, but I always saw myself running a business eventually, if that makes any sense.
I think it's that independence.
Yes,
As I've kind of just loosely touched on, my kind of career or corporate career, if you like. Something again, I'll refer back to the free serve days. It didn't feel like a job. it felt like I was working with a bunch of mates doing some really cool stuff and getting paid for it. Um, Things didn't really get much more corporate, although it did through the names and the brands that I've mentioned. But yeah, it didn't feel comfortable to me to pursue a career in a corporate world and that kind of ladder. And I
Yeah.
guess that was evident with me, choosing to go as an independent as well.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So looking back over the foundation and the growth of Perform Partners, what are some of the biggest issues and challenges that you've had to overcome?
I think probably so. We've been in business now 7 years. Obviously, we got hit when COVID came around.
Yes.
That was probably the biggest challenge that we had.
Yep.
Now, the very nature of what we do and what I'd done and the other boys and girls in the business, we were comfortable working remote. We'd done it for some time.
Right.
But yeah, there was a few more than just me and a handful. There was other people, and we were involved in quite a significant program of work. That was high profile, and
Yep.
it could have made or broken us. Thankfully, I think it made us,
Yep.
and we made that a real success. So it was that COVID times, the challenges. I won't procrastinate. We've all been through it. We know the lessons that we've all learned from that. But that was one of the biggest challenges, I think, within the business today. But ironically, and you kind of hear this a lot, you turn that adversity into success.
Yes.
And that's what we did. So, it was a 2 year program. It was classed as one of the largest cloud migrations in Europe at the
Wow.
time.
Wow.
And we actually entered our first awards with that project against some fairly stiff competition. We were a little bit wet behind the ears. We were young bucks, and we just thought, what the hell? And the awards, unfortunately, was all online, so we had to do the award ceremony online, which was bizarre.
Oh, interesting.
But we won. We
Brilliant.
won. It was the Digital City Awards in Manchester virtually, 2019, Cloud
Well
Project
done.
of the Year. So that was what was the biggest challenge into probably one of our greatest successes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And what, whether it's from challenges or successes that you had, what are your biggest learnings about growing your business?
There's many. I think probably a very common one that you've heard on this on podcast is imposter syndrome. So, am I good enough to do what we're setting out to do? Can I do what we're saying we
Yes.
can do?
Yes.
Um, and that still exists in me, and I think it exists in everyone to a certain degree. But you face into things. I think pushing yourself, uh, making yourself comfortable in uncomfortable situations. I've got more and more comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I think that can translate outside of business as
Yeah.
well, in your personal lives and anything else that you aspire to do. Um, so yeah, I think that would be the biggest lesson. Take confidence in what you're doing,
Yeah.
what you're about, how you're going about it, and go back to some of the fundamentals of in the business context of what you're doing, what you're selling, what your message is. Um, yeah, there's lots of different aspects to kind of work around, but persevere. Resilience is probably one of the biggest things I've
Yeah.
learned to develop as an individual. It's not personal is another one,
Yep.
which is something that yeah, I kind of struggled with that in the early days. Again, less so now.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, there's always lessons.
Yep.
Business doesn't stop. It's an always on thing
Absolutely.
that I've learned, which is something else we'll probably talk about creating a balance, which is super important as well. Because yeah, again, I guess like a lot of business owners, you can just be absolutely consumed. You could
Yep.
work every hour of the day and every weekend, and then the balance slowly starts to tip, and that's not a good place. That's not where you want to be.
No, agree completely. And you're probably not surprised to know that a good chunk of people I speak to on this talk about imposter syndrome as being an issue.
Hmm.
And there's a great quote that was attributed to Stephen Bartlett, the guy from the Diary of a CEO, and he says he loves imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
He loves it because it means he's in the right room and that he's
Yeah,
going to learn something.
yeah,
And I like that.
yeah, absolutely. All those kind of uncomfortable. It was going back to what I was saying. Getting more comfortable being uncomfortable. That's where you're being stretched. That's where
Yes,
you're learning. And learning is an incredible thing. Never stop learning. There's so much out there. Stretch yourself. Become uncomfortable, and
yeah.
just accept that feeling of imposter syndrome. I've started to embrace that now.
Yeah, it's a funny one as well because a lot of people talk about staying in their comfort zone, and that by its definition, it's interesting though. I do find lots of people in business are actually in a discomfort zone already, but choosing to stay in that, which is seems nuts. It's not
Yes.
working well for me, but I'm still going to stay here. And it's like that's nuts. When it is truly comfortable and we're happy and relaxed in it, then there is reason to leave and not to leave. But as I say, quite often I meet people and things aren't go right for them, but they still choose not to engage with change.
Yeah, and again, there's balance there. There is comfort points, and it's good to embrace them and enjoy them.
Yes,
Because I'll be honest, there's less comfort points within business.
yes,
So when they come along, um, you know, enjoy it. And I've heard this. I'm sure other people have heard it before. That's the way you celebrate successes. Really make a song and dance and recognize success and people
yeah,
involved in that success is super important. And
yes.
that's for me the yin and yang of business.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I know we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
Yeah, I've not personally had, when I hear coach, other than business coaches, I think sport coaches. We have someone in the business. They're not a non-exec director, but they're performing a non-exec director type consulting guidance for
Yeah.
Paul, Sean and I, which has been massively useful and helpful to developing, growing the business, looking out for the red flags, etc., etc.
Yes.
Um, but no, I think take away the coach, I guess, term and tag. It's a number of other people that I've encountered throughout my life. Um, and that can be line managers from roles gone past. Um, I'm fortunate to have a good network of friends slash colleagues that have either been successful within business, who I can bounce ideas off, or are going through a similar journey. Professional sports people, for example, and um, yeah, and I guess it would be amiss not to mention my father-in-law. He's been an incredible influence on my life. He did incredibly well in business, and I speak to him often
Brilliant.
about lessons that he had in business.
Yeah.
Very different world he was working in, the organisation that he grew, but the fundamentals are exactly the same.
Yeah.
So it's just good to get that kind of perspective from,
Brilliant.
and it knows I don't mind. He knows I don't. He doesn't mind me saying this from the old guard. It's a really good
Yes.
perspective.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, personally, think the best business knowledge was actually written about in the 1920s and 30s, and has been developed and refined over time. But old knowledge is definitely good knowledge. Obviously,
Absolutely.
there's a brave new world we're in front of us. but the fundamentals are still the same, I think.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And I think, the networking, I continue to be a bit dubious about networking. I'm not an introvert. I'm fairly comfortable in my own skin, and I genuinely enjoy meeting new people. But networking just feels a bit forced at
Mm.
times. And yeah, I think there are benefits to that. I mean, I recently went on, it was a networking event, but it was sport based.
Right.
So paddle tennis is essentially what it was.
Oh,
So this
cool.
up and coming sport, paddle tennis, which I'd never played before. And yeah, there was a big group of people, 40, 50, 60 people there.
Brilliant.
And it was great. And through sport, you then engaged in conversation about business.
Brilliant.
You know, so yeah, there's ways and means of doing things. And back to your point about coaches, people, surround yourself with really good people.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. There's great such great people out there, and from whether it's people you mentioned or others or just in general, do you find yourself using any favourite quotes or sayings of and about business or success in general?
There's a few. I think we're kind of inundated with
Yes,
content
we
uh,
are.
in this day and age. There is one that stuck with me, and it's a favorite film of mine. So life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you might miss it. Which is Ferris Bueller,
Love
which
it.
which is a great film, and I think that applies to business, and obviously it's a bit of a life quote with a comedic angle, but yeah, I've always that stayed with me for some reason.
Good.
And then another one which I hear a lot. I don't know if it's a quote where it came from, but it's really simple. Trust the process,
Yep.
and
Brilliant.
and applying that in the business context. So when we run marketing campaigns, um, we have been guilty in the past of doing things for a month and going, well, it's not working.
Yep.
It's not working because it hadn't delivered the results that we thought it was going to deliver. But did we give it enough time?
Yes.
So everything has got a purpose. You've got to wrap some kind of framework and metrics around certain things and then trust the process. And then once you've got data, it's something that, again, I've learned within business, make data-driven decisions, not gut, subjective, personal. Uh, so again, it's just, yeah, trust the process.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And can you recommend any favourite books or podcasts that again support business or personal development?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's even I get overwhelmed. There's so much out there.
Yep.
But I guess there is a few books or authors that are kind of my go-to. One which I have on my desk and it's been there for the last 7 years is a book called Scale Up. It was recommended again through kind of a business coach type person, someone that been there and done that. So Scale Up by Vern Harnish, I think it was published
Yep.
2013, 2012, so 10 plus years ago. And it is just the fundamentals of scaling a business, starting a business and scaling it. Um, yeah, I still refer back to that.
Brilliant.
Perform's kind of on the cusp of a medium-sized business right now. So it's really interesting times. Again, challenges. There is constant challenge in business.
Yep.
And again, through the people that I kind of mentioned before, or individuals that have been there and done that, you get snippets of this information. Or when you get to 50 people, it'll feel like this, or look out for that, or watch
Yes.
out for this. So yeah, Scale Up, I would highly recommend to anyone thinking about starting a business, or 2 to 5 to 10 years in business. It's
Yeah. Great.
incredibly relevant, and it's a great reference book. It's written so you can jump into any kind of chapter. So if there's a specific thing that's challenging you, you're unsure about, or just darn difficult, just you can pick it up and
Brilliant.
get some guidance from that one. Um, Another go-to author, I guess, kind of outside of business is Yuval Noah Harari. So Yuval's an incredibly intelligent individual.
Right.
He's written some incredibly successful books, Sapiens,
Oh, okay.
about
Yeah.
the humankind, and then his most recent one, which I'm actually listening to on as a audiobook, Nexus, which talks about the evolution of data from when it
Right.
began to modern AI. Yeah, he's more of a kind of futurist. I just find him incredibly smart. He makes you think about things, or certainly makes me think about things differently. So yeah, I'd highly recommend
Brilliant.
him. And another one, I'll mention it in case Sean doesn't mention it on his podcast, because he shared it with me, and it's a great book. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And for me, that resonates with my experience in business and with Perform Partners. Um, what seems to be the most difficult way of getting things done, and that can be in any context, seems to be the way of
Get it done.
getting through. Which does resonate because I think I can't remember the term that's used against it, but if you've got 10 things in your day to do, you'll probably leave the hardest as the 10th.
Yes.
Don't. Make sure it's the number one thing that you do, because once you've
Great.
done that, everything else becomes fairly straightforward. So, yeah, Obstacle is the Way. Great book.
I like that. That's probably mirrored in Brian Tracy's book, Eat That Frog. Um,
Yes.
where yeah, the frog is the big ugly thing we don't want to eat. It's
Yeah,
exactly that. Get that done first, and you win the day. Win the first hour, you win the day. Um,
absolutely. Absolutely. And
Brilliant.
then podcasts, I mentioned they were kind of inundated. Everyone's
Yep.
got a podcast. I mean, Perform even do a podcast. So if anyone's at a loose end, All Things Change with Perform Partners on Spotify is a good listen. But
Brilliant.
there's, I mean, there's so many. High Performance is one that I kind of go to. I'm not a massive fan of the hosts, if I'm honest, and apologies, Jake and Damien, if you ever listen to this. But they do have some incredible guests,
Yes.
and the principle of the high performance podcast and what they talk about, I think, is really good. And I've listened to a lot. I'm sent a lot of links to, oh, you must listen to this, Rob, or must listen to that. It's really good. Jay Shetty. So my good wife put me onto Jay Shetty a number of years ago. Um, so I dip in and out of some of his stuff. Um, Oprah Winfrey. So
Interesting
Oprah
lady.
got the Oprah podcast, and again my good lady wife put me onto that one, and she's just phenomenal,
Yeah.
right? Period. She's just a phenomenal lady, and again, some of her guests and what she talks about and the depth that she goes into is really worth a listen. And then the other one I would recommend is Staying in Hollywood, Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Interesting guy.
so he did, I think it was a book originally, Green Lights. So he basically went over all of his journals. He's a big journaling
Yes.
fan.
Yeah.
Obviously, incredibly successful actor, but yeah, a very astute, smart family man as well. And so he just developed this concept around traffic light system. So he'd go through his journals and kind of mark with a red or amber or green pen things that had happened. So um, things that had blocked him or stopped him or aggravated him or his family would be in the amber or red area, which he'd just ignore. Forget about that. Things in the green, he'd try and cultivate
Brilliant.
and take forward. So again, I think for me, bit of guidance because again, there is just so much out there and so much
Yes.
content. Have a think about, what is it you're after? What you're
Yeah.
looking for? Is it something light, something quite heavy? 'Cause I think, yeah, these days there's everything for everyone's kind of taste.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's one something for everybody, I think. Um, and speaking of learning, what would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far?
A lot. I think I touched on it before. Resilience
Yes,
has certainly come to the front. There's been some very, very challenging, difficult times in business. Thankfully, I've got two uh, great business buddies in Paul and Sean, and we've
brilliant,
bounced off each other successfully for the last 7 years. I think we've only had one really cross word in 7 years, so I think that's
brilliant.
not a bad. So resilience, listen. I've learned to listen a lot more. I think communication skills are super important, but yeah, listening
Brilliant.
is super important too. When you've got a reasonable sized team,
Yes,
and you're dealing with people. The nature of what we do as a consultancy, we're professional services. It's about people, and even for things that we do with clients, there's two common threads in what we do. You can take the logo from the top of the office or the virtual office, if you like, and there's two common threads. It's people and culture.
yeah,
That always seems to be the challenge or the blocker
yeah,
to an outcome or a deliverable. So people are front and center, and people are really difficult, right? People are
yeah,
challenging. So communications skills, empathy, I think is up there. Having empathy, being able to adapt and influence. Um, all of this stuff sounds easy, words we've all heard,
yes,
but doing it in practice is a learning. And I'm no expert, and I'm constantly learning with this stuff. But we have a really good culture within Perform Partners, and I can speak to anyone. We don't have kind of much of a hierarchy kind of in the organisation, and we get feedback all the time on how we're doing and what we're doing. Um, but accepting there is key decisions and
yeah,
accountability that stops with me and Paul and Sean, and having courage, the courage to make those decisions because yeah, we do need to make some decisions, some difficult decisions sometimes,
yeah,
um, and it's very much for the good of the business. So I remember in the early days. Almost an analogy of the business at one point was it was like bringing up a baby. It was our baby.
yeah.
It's not. It's like a difficult young teenager these days.
Yes, that makes sense.
Um, and I'm very acutely aware we've got a number of people that we are responsible for.
Yeah,
So people paying their mortgages and bills and the rest of it. And Perform Partners is its own thing now. And I'm fortunate to be in the position that I'm in, working with the people that I'm working with.
brilliant, brilliant. So, speaking of those people and the team in general, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
Challenges for sure. Well, I know that it will be challenging. Like I mentioned, we're on the cusp of that medium-sized business.
Yes,
Who doesn't want to continue to grow as a business? We do, and we will, and that will come with its own challenges. Um, it's always been a challenge in that kind of new business space for us because we're not salespeople. Professional services is difficult.
yeah,
It's a luxury for most clients to spend uh, money on consultancies. So working that new business space, the pipeline, the marketing message, the proposition, we're constantly, well, it's not true, not constantly. We're very mindful of that.
yeah,
We've got a great team around it, um, but to continue to strengthen that
yeah,
in that kind of new business development phase. it's where we need to push, and that's where the growth will come from. And like any business, we need to have a healthy pipeline.
Yes.
So I think it's just more of the same
Yep.
that we've experienced. So I think we're in an incredible position. I think we've learned an incredible amount. I think we're in a great place for growth
Right.
as an organization, but as people, I think
Yeah.
we're in a good place.
Yes.
So yeah, looking forward to that.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And I'm keen to know what you'd say to anyone that was thinking of going to business right now, Rob.
It's hard. Don't go into business. I think a couple of ways of answering that. You see kind of the younger generation or the YouTube influence generation, and I've got a young family, so I can see it front and center and see the people that influence my kids. And it's not about Lamborghinis and watches and houses and these material things that seem to be broadcast to the younger generation. Um, for me, it's very basic. It's the principles of hard work.
Hmm.
I think it comes back to your values as well. So um, back to the question, Chris, what would I say? Just focus on what it is that you want to do. I would
Yeah.
absolutely 100% encourage people to go into business. It's brilliant. It's challenging, rewarding, all of those good things. But it doesn't give you more money. It doesn't give you more time. It does the opposite of that. I learned that pretty quick. Uh, the rewards do come,
Yes.
but that comes in the success of growing and developing the
Yes.
business.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely, fully encourage people to go into business, but know what you're doing in business. Be
Yeah.
very crystal clear on what you're doing.
Brilliant. And if you started again, is there anything significant you'd think you'd do differently?
Um, I think I would. I mean, I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed the lesson. I
Brilliant.
mean, it's gone in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
and that's another thing. So don't procrastinate. If you're on the edge of making a decision, back to the previous question, do it because time absolutely flies. And it goes
Yeah.
back to my quote, right? Time doesn't stop. Um, this no, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. There's some I think basic things that we haven't cocked up in any big way. We've not made any absolute clangers or bad decisions. Um, I'm yeah, not sure how to answer that other than how I have.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And finally, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that, Rob?
An 18-year-old me, wow. Travel more, travel more. I think life's about opportunity.
Yep.
I don't want to get too deep on it. It's something I wish I'd done more. I did the school uni job thing. I know
Yes.
people take a year out. I thoroughly enjoy traveling. It's really good for your soul, meeting new people,
Yes.
experiencing new cultures. And for me, yeah, life's about opportunity, and you will just get more and more opportunity. And that's what I say to my kids as well. The
Brilliant.
more opportunities that you can create and carve out for yourself, and that I can give you, the more choices that you'll get. You never know if you're traveling
Yeah.
across Cambodia and you bump into someone, whatever it might be, and
Absolutely.
can lead to something. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's what I'd say to myself. Just my younger self, travel more, give yourself more opportunities.
Very, 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 very sound advice. And for anyone, I believe, and I'd certainly underline and concur with that. Rob, it's been fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time today. For anyone that's watching and would like to get in touch with you or perform partners, what would be the best way to do that?
For me personally, so if you could search up, obviously there's a lot of Rob Smiths out there. So if you search up Rob Smith Perform Partners on LinkedIn, connect with me, send me a message. I'm very open to meeting up with people and swapping messages. I don't hide in dark corners. And then you can hit Perform Partners online at perform-partners.com.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, look, it'd be great to swing by another 6, 12 months to just see how the development is going, especially as you said,
Absolutely.
going from the sort of small to the medium phase is quite a significant thing, and it'll be of interest to many people watching. So, but for now, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.